Thank you very much for joining me this morning to look at the planning and MRP in particular, and how it works in Cim200. It's going to be quite high level, but just to give you the principles, hopefully, how it actually works. So my name is Juuso. I look after the Cim200 product here at Cim, and if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A. My colleague Becca is on the call as well, and she will be able to um, deliver those questions over to me at the end. So I will address those after the presentation. So first of all, I'm the agenda for today's webinar is to have a look, first of all, who are we? Very, very briefly. I don't want to bore you too much about that. What is planning in Cim200? And then we are looking at the demands and replenishments and how MRP will react to those and how it actually produces some of the recommendation dates. That is on a high level. There are numerous ways of getting the dates and um, what to order, when to order, quantities, and everything else, as well as how the production scheduling works in Cim200. But if I move on and get on, so just first of all, who are we? We are Cim Software, and we are the authors of Cim50 and Cim200 manufacturing solutions. And those are Cim50 integrates with Sage 50, Cim200 with Sage 200, and today we are looking into the Cim200 product in particular. And as a business, we have a wealth of knowledge in manufacturing from both sides of the fence, from the tools to the manufacturing, project management, and software implementations. So, and both of our manufacturing solutions, Cim50 and Cim50, are fully accredited and endorsed by Sage. So over the years, we have gained the highest level of accreditation for development by Sage. So we are called Sage Tech Partner Plus. There's only a handful of Sage Tech Partner Pluses in the country, but there are numerous of Sage Tech partners, basically allowing Sage who've been allowed to develop for a Sage infrastructure. But we are the highest accreditation for integrating with Sage. Also, it's worth mentioning that all of our development is done by our in-house development team, and 100% of the code is produced in the UK. So we are not outsourcing anything. There's no external factors. So it's all produced within the UK, and that's well made in Britain. Accreditation comes from as well. So what is planning in Cim200? So in very much as a summary, Cim200 looks at the demands, which I will look into future in the next few slides, and matches those demands with the existing replenishments, which I look into more detail shortly as well. But matching those two will give a set of recommendations to raise new orders, reschedule existing orders. That all leads into more efficient stock management, as well as assisting in production planning. So just to make your manufacturing plants to operate at the highest level of efficiency as possible. So demands. There are a number of different demands that the planning module looks into. So if we start all of this to looking at what is needed. So there are a number of different ways of generating demands in Cim200. So demands are any could be it could be summarized as a any expected stock movements out of stock with on a certain date, with the exception of make for stock and reorder levels, which are creating demand to maintain set level of stock in a warehouse and in a case of make for stock on a certain date. So you might have some uh, demands on a expected demands on a set date, or you want to make more stock for Christmas rush or something like that, or for Easter is coming up, so more Easter eggs into the shelves on a certain date. Other demands, like sales order demand, is a committed order. So planning module will see it as a stock level movement out, which is quite a technical term, but it means that it's going out. Um, it will also need to be replenished somehow, whether that is from free stock or by getting new stock in somehow. Don't know how. There are new ways of getting in. Is it stock transfers? Is it um, ordering, or is it making something? But we will have a look at those in a moment. Sales forecasts work with the time frenzies the same ways as they do in standard Cim200, but now in Cim200, the time fences can be adjusted from the client in itself. So you when you're running the demand schedule, it's uh, uh, you can adjust those time fences there and then. So in addition to traditional demands, like what's been mentioned, like sales forecasts, make for stock records, as well as works orders and so forth, you can also include pro formas and on hold customers and locked works orders. But you can also exclude any individual demands, like a single sales order line from a sales order that is otherwise included in the sales order can be excluded as a demand. So you might want to deal with that on the isolation, and Cim200 does allow to that. When you are running the demand schedule, technical term, but you can run that manually, as you have to do that in Sage 200, but you can also schedule the demand schedule run to do to run before you do the actual MRP run. And the MRP, so the demand schedule is replacing the Sage MPS. It is the same thing, but it's just been renamed, and it is you can separate, you can run that automatically, and it will produce you two lists. One to tell you what are the included demands and what is excluded from demands. You might want to have some individual records excluded from demands, but you can also exclude anything outside of the time fences, anything like that. And that can be seen. So if I go in to my demand schedule view in Cim200 in itself, it produces a list and exclusions. If you have a look at the exclusions reasons, it will say that there is a demand set for reorder level, for instance, for this fridge freezer, but we have enough stock. So if you're expecting to see a recommendation for the item, you can go and investigate why it was excluded, and it is excluded because we have enough stock. But it also can be the works order component line is issued, so there is a demand for it, but that demand has been satisfied, so it has been excluded as a demand. Furthermore, like I said, works order marked as excluded from MRP demand. So I have individually works order number 34 has been excluded from a demand as a record. If it would be included, that would be included as a demand. So from here, you have the exclusions with the clear with the explanation in clear English why they have been excluded, and there are nearly 30 different reasons why they would be excluded. So it might be worth reviewing that. And of course, you can see inclusions, what is being included, and what type of a demand it is, whether it's sales orders, works orders, reorder demands, and such like. But it will be represented to you in very clear manner, in my opinion, at least. So that's the demands. Then there are replenishments. So what are replenishments? So you have a number of sources that planning considers as replenishments. Uh, they are really just any stock that has been planned to come into stock at a certain date or what is already in the stock. So stock can come in from an existing purchase order at the requested time, or that's what planning looks at. It looks at the requested time. So that's how it plans around it. Or it can come from a works order at its completion date. They can also um, come in from a quarantine record. So you might have a purchase order that has gone in for inspection, and that inspection record you already have it at the property, and it can be seen as a replenishment. But then sometimes you might find an item that maybe the box is damaged. You don't know whether it's actually fit for purpose anymore. You can place it into the quarantine, but you place it in a quarantine location that will be excluded from a replenishment. So you count that stock as not being available. So stock is there, but it's in a location that will be ignored by Cim200 planning. So that will then not be considered as a replenishment. So you have all of those options available to you. Also, with free stock, when it is seen as a replenishment for your demands, uh, it is dependent on where the stock is and how you have set up the warehouse hierarchy. So there's another complication in terms of setting the system up to see what is available to replenish the demands in a certain locations now. So all of that will then again feed in to the MRP, how the system sees as a what is a MRP demands and replenishments. So now that we know that planning considers different demands and replenishments, the MRP run will match the two, and for anything or any shortfall, you will get recommendations. So recommended dates for ordering or making something, and the quantities that you will be making things in or purchasing them in are dependent on the settings within the demands or the stock items in itself. So there are and there are also links to the parent orders that may come into play, as there are two types of links. Firstly, planning links is the link made from an MRP recommendation raised works order, for instance, um, they might change when your demands change. And you run the MRP again, the MRP might actually shuffle those works orders or purchase orders to go onto the different demands, different sales order demands, for instance, and that keeps the production as efficient as possible. But then you can also have some firm links where the orders are actually pre-allocated to the like, let's say you have sub-assembly works orders or purchase orders. They're actually pre-allocated to the works order that's being produced for a sales order. That link then will be dealt with in an isolation to a bigger picture. So you are almost running multiple different MRP runs, looking at the replenishments, but some of the replenishments are tied into the demands already. So the efficiencies are not considered at all at this stage. They are just hard linked, and might be that you might have made some customizations on a works order that are specific to a sales order, for instance, and those items then will be hard linked one to one. So not looking at the efficiencies from then on at that level. Of course, the lower level demands for the component purchasing and such like that, that's where the flexibility might come into play. Also, the MRP refresh, you can filter that for specific records. For instance, if you run MRP for particular stock records, you can actually filter it for a product group or range of stock items and such like. And same for sales orders. So it's not just for a single sales order. You can actually run the MRP for a particular customer, for instance, if you have sales orders from multiple sales orders from a particular customer, you can do that. If the if you're filtering it like that, it is good to know that any other demands will not be considered, and full MRP run is recommended to get a full range of recommendations and take everything into consideration. So all of that run has been done in isolation to any other demands. But at the same time, it can be if you are making only ones and twos, or only a few big bills in a year, it actually might be worth running it that way to give you a better picture of the particular sales order. And then once that's been run, we get these recommendations to raise new works orders or purchase orders. You might get rescheduling of dates or times if that's been set on the system that way, that you might be getting, let's say, sales orders being pushed back 2 weeks. The works order replenishing that might be pushed out 2 weeks, and a purchase order that's already been raised might be pushed out 2 weeks. But it might be that just the works order is being pushed out 2 weeks on scheduling because the purchase orders are not allowed to be rescheduled, for instance. Also, we might get some transfer recommendations if the warehouse hierarchy is set and the stock is not in a correct warehouse. So how do these recommendations look in the system in itself? Uh, if I go in my MRP view, so we get our recommendations. We know what the demand type is, whether they're going to be on time, whether they're going to be late, whether they've been combined over a period of time. You also get a number of different lists saying what were orders being excluded, what demands we're seeing, what replenishments we are seeing, what orders will be laid, whether they are going to be works orders or purchase orders. So we get a little bit of a warnings list. We get rescheduling list. Don't have any on this data set, but we also can get transfer recommendations that we need to get items transferred from a location to another, and when do we need to transfer them. You can define the transfer time, so you might get the recommendation to transfer stock 3 days before it is needed an alternative location. So you get lots of different kinds of recommendations, and you can also view some tags. It's easy to see, right? This is why do we need them. I have nothing coming in. Also, I need some purchase orders on a certain date to replenish for my required works order. But how does that actually work in, and how do we calculate it? It's quite confusing, especially if you're not familiar with the MRP. But what we can do is to have a bit of a breakdown how it actually happens. So, right, firstly, the demand date, let's say, is a sales order line, requested date. Then MRP will work backwards from that date just to see what is available, what do we need. Say we have a safety lead time, which is basically a buffer time, and the works order. So the works order would be completed, let's say, 7 days, a week before the order line is due. So how it works is we have a sales order for the 28th of March. Safety lead time says, okay, it will be completed on the 21st, or you need to complete it on the 21st. Anything between 21st and 28th will be a sort of a danger zone. Then it will look into the bill of material record and breaks it down and has a look on how long the operations will take. And we have to note that there are multiple calendars available in Cim200 where you can set like, okay, these operations can only be done on a Saturday, only on a night shift on a Wednesday, only on Monday to Wednesday schedule, and MRP will take those calendars for individual operations on the resources to into account, and all the run times on the operations will be multiplied by a quantity that's been recommended, and the setup and tear down times are fixed length regardless of the quantity. So let's say you're making one where you have a run time of an hour, you have a setup time of half an hour, it takes an hour and a half to make. If you make two, the setup time is still half an hour, but the run time now is 2 hours, so it takes you 2.5 hours. So therefore, the more you make, the less per each it will cost. But all of those will be calculated. So let's say we have 3 days of production time for that particular works order. Therefore, it will go and a works order will need to be started on the 18th to be completed on the 21st to give us that 1 week buffer time. If there are any sub-assemblies, the process is repeated, but then it will be working back from the 18th. If the sub-assemblies are associated with the operation, then the due date will be the operation start date. I'm not going to go too much into detail because it's got very little use, but it's quite clever in Cim200 how it calculates that you actually need that halfway throughout the production, just to optimize the stock holding levels, and especially if you are running out of space or if you have any stock that is expiring and so forth. And finally, we will look into what the replenishments are. So, do we have any shortages? Do we not have enough replenishments within the warehouse hierarchy and such like? So, we need to start the production on the 18th. We need to raise a purchase order on the 4th. And why would that be? Is we have a say 7 days safety lead time. So we need to receive the stock, allowing any supplier delays and such like on for the 18th. And then once it's been set up, it's all been automatically calculated. So something that needs to go out the door will need to be um, made on the 28th. The job need to be dispatched on the 28th. Need to be manufacturing needs to start on the 18th, but the components need to be ordered by the 4th, or any combination. If you have multiple suppliers, of course, the dates might differ. But that's in nutshell how it works in terms of times. Also, when you're scheduling the production, we have our graphical scheduler, which will include the MRP recommendations into the scheduling tool, where you can actually make your production plan before you actually committing any production orders. So any works orders can be scheduled before you actually releasing them onto the system, and it will highlight any overloads, any conflicts and resources and such like. Well, we can look into the scheduling more in detail, but it all feeds into that to bring it all together. And once you're happy, all the purchasing or works order recommendations can be actioned individually, one by one, en masse, or you can action them for all the descendants. So let's say you have a high level top level works order going on to the sales order, you can action everything that is required for that particular sub-assembly in one go if you wanted to. Also, we will add links, as mentioned before, to the orders, and they will be either planning or the planning links or firm links, depending on type of a link or depending on the settings on the stock item level. Right. I know it's been quite a heavy session in half an hour trying to explain MRP. There's a lot more to it. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Or if you have a business partner, talk to your business partner who is supporting your Cim200, and I'm sure they will be happy to run through that more in detail with you. Becca, could you let me know, have you got any questions at all?
Hello. Yes, there are a couple. So one question is, how long does a typical MRP take to run?
Right. That's one of these, like how long is a piece of string? It can take anything from a minute to a few hours. Compared to Sage 200 manufacturing, depending on how you run it. So it takes into account. It's really difficult question. A really good question, but really difficult to answer categorically. Um, we've seen some customers who would not be able to run MRP in Sage 200 manufacturing in 24 hours, reducing the MRP run down to about 15 minutes. On the flip side of that, we also seen the customers whose MRP time's been 3 to 4 hours, something like that, can now run it in about half an hour. But then there are some customers whose MRP run used to be 2 hours and it's still 2 hours. it is depending on how many levels of bills of materials, how much you are aggregating, combining the recommendations and everything else. So it is really, really difficult to give a categorical answer. We've seen in average, probably compared to say Cim200 manufacturing, gains of about halving they um halving day MRP runtimes. But please don't hold me to that because you will get reduction on time, but the scale of it is anything from pretty much from about 5% to 95%. So sorry, I don't really have a definite answer to that. Well, I guess best thing is to give it a test.
Fab. And then another question is it possible to run MRP during the day without asking everyone to get off stage?
Right. Okay. Really good question, actually. And I'm a little bit embarrassed not to include that onto my presentation. But yes, you can run the MRP whilst everyone is working in the system. So for those who are technical, so when you're scheduling the MRP to run, let's say a traditional overnight run, it runs on the server in itself. So and everyone is out of the system. You can still be in the system, that doesn't matter, but you can schedule it to run overnight and it uses the resources from the server in itself. When you're running it manually during the day using the desktop client, it actually utilizes your machine memory to and resources to run the MRP. So it puts a lot less tax on your server in itself, and it doesn't lock any records. So you will be able to operate, and everyone can operate without actually even knowing that the MRP is running. Only area where it puts any tax on is your machine that it's running on, but you can still work. You can still carry on working. You can put MRP to run, and you can still work, and you probably won't even notice that much difference. Only thing is the MRP run will be slightly slower, typically, depending on, of course, your spec of your server and your client machine. But yes, short answer is yes, you can run the MRP whilst everyone is in the system anytime you like.
Fantastic. And we don't appear to have any other questions today.
That's easy today then. If you have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact us as well as your business partner. Yeah, hopefully I'll see you on next webinar.